The last warning, the Great Hall of the United Galactic Council was silent. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in their curved seats, each one watching the center of the room where a single human stood. Captain Ryan Hale had no armor, no weapons, no guards. He only had a plain black uniform, the crest of Earth's fleet on his chest, and eyes that didn't blink. The council chamber itself was a place meant to make visitors feel small. It was built high above a floating city on a planet of clouds. The floor was polished silver, reflecting. The towering walls covered in banners from 100 star systems. The air shimmered with soft light, but there was nothing warm in it. It was the kind of light that made the shadows sharper. The kind of place where words weighed more than weapons. An insectoid delegate from the Vashkari leaned forward, clicking her mandibles. "Human," she hissed. "This is your final chance to explain why Earth refuses to obey the new trade laws." Ryan did not move. His voice came slow, quiet, but with a weight that seemed to press against the ears of everyone present. "For years, Earth has followed the rules of this council," he said. "We have been patient. We have been fair. We have been nice." A ripple of mocking laughter moved through the chamber. Some delegates leaned back, whispering to each other in their own languages. To them, humans were still newcomers, clever, yes, but weak. They had small fleets, fragile ships, and technology decades behind the great powers of the galaxy. Ryan let them laugh. He didn't raise his voice, but he looked at them the way a predator looks at prey. "You think our mercy is weakness," he said. "You think because we have not shown our full strength? We have none." The laughter stopped. A representative from the Co-3 Empire, his skin glowing with bioluminescent lines, bared his teeth. "And what strength would that be?" "Your fleets. Our toys. Your colonies are few. Your people still breathe air and drink water like primitives," he sneered. Ryan's gaze didn't leave him. "Do you know why Earth has never fought for control of this council?" Ryan asked. No one answered. "Because we chose not to," he said. And the words cut through the hall like a blade. Behind him, the massive holographic display lit up. A star map of the galaxy shimmered into view. Certain sectors glowed red, places where humans had fought small battles in the past. In each of those battles, humans had been outnumbered, yet still walked away with victory. The council had called those victories luck, but the truth was very different. Ryan took a step forward. "For 20 years, Earth has held back," he said. "Our scientists, our engineers, our strategists. They have been building in silence." He looked up at the banners of the great alien empires hanging above him. "You do not know our true fleets. You have never seen our true weapons. You have never fought us at full strength." A cold murmur spread among the alien leaders. The insectoid Vashkari delegate clicked her mandibles again, this time slower. "What are you saying, human?" she asked. Ryan's eyes hardened. "I'm saying the age of kindness is over," he said. "I'm saying Earth will not be pushed, taxed, threatened, or attacked without consequence." The chamber lights flickered for a moment. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, till the enormous viewports on the far wall shifted their tint. Through the clouds and the high sky, a shadow moved. It wasn't a planet. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a ship, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was black as the void, but lines of blue light pulsed across its hull. Its shape was sleek, sharp, like a blade forged for only one purpose. Even from this distance, it radiated danger. It moved with silent precision, blocking out the stars as it passed. A deep, uneasy silence filled the chamber. One of the delegates whispered, "That is not in our registry." Ryan allowed himself the smallest smile. "No," he said, "it isn't." The alien leaders shifted in their seats, suddenly unsure. For years, humans had sent old warships to joint fleet ships the galaxy considered outdated, but this was something entirely different. And if there was one ship like it, how many more could there be? Ryan's voice broke the silence one last time. "This is not a threat," he said. "This is a warning. You have seen what we wanted you to see. You have fought what we allowed you to fight. But that time is over." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Earth is done acting nice." He turned and walked away. No guards stopped him, no voices called after him, because in that moment, every leader in that chamber understood something they had never believed before. The humans had not been bluffing. They had been waiting, and the wait was over. After Captain Ryan Hale left the Galactic Council chamber, the air in the room stayed heavy. No one dared to speak for several minutes. Alien leaders simply sat in silence, staring at each other. Some were angry, others were unsettled, and a few looked worried. They should have listened to the warning, but pride is a dangerous thing, and pride, in the hands of the wrong leaders, can start wars. It began on the Outer Rim, far from Earth. A human colony named Eden Reach floated in the quiet of the Hestera system. It was not a military base, not a fortress, just a peaceful world where miners, farmers, and scientists lived. Children played under domes filled with artificial sunlight. Ships came and went, carrying food and minerals to nearby systems. The colony's people thought they were far from danger, but danger had been watching them for a long time. In the dark between stars, the Kothari Empire's 7th Fleet gathered. They were the same empire whose representative had mocked Ryan in. The Council, their leader, Admiral Vorak, saw Ryan's warning as an insult. To him, humans were an upstart race that needed to be taught their place. And Eden Reach was the perfect target. The attack came without a single declaration of war. At dawn on Eden Reach, the sky lit up with fire. Massive Kothari warships broke through the upper atmosphere, their cannons roaring. Energy blasts tore through the colony's shields in seconds. Buildings crumbled, domes shattered, and streets filled with screams. Inside the main control tower, Governor Alina Marsh tried to send a distress call. Her hands shook as she activated the emergency beacon. "This is Eden Reach. We are under attack. We need immediate help." Her voice cut through static and interference, but she didn't know if anyone was hearing it. The Kothari fleet didn't care who they killed. They destroyed hospitals, food stores, even water plants. It was not just a military strike, it was a message. Earth cannot protect you. Hours later, the smoke still rose from burning cities. Thousands were dead, many more wounded. The Kothari left as quickly as they had come. No attempt to occupy. No demands for surrender, just destruction and silence. The galaxy heard about the attack before Earth did. Alien news channels broadcast the footage. They showed burning buildings, crying children, and ships flying away into the night. On most worlds, people shook their heads and muttered, "This is what happens when you provoke the great powers." When the news finally reached Earth, there was no shouting. There were no long debates in the human government halls. Only a deep, cold stillness. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. In the Solar Defense Command, deep beneath the surface of Mars, generals and admirals gathered around a table of glowing star maps. Ryan Hale stood at the head, his jaw tight. Governor Elena Marsh's last transmission played on the room's speakers. The crackling, desperate message filled the chamber. No one spoke until it ended. Ryan looked at the others. "This was no border skirmish," he said. "This was meant to humiliate us." Admiral Vega, a tall woman with steel-gray hair, nodded slowly. "They think we're still the Earth that bends to the Council's will," she said. Ryan's voice was colder than the void outside. "Then it's time they met the Earth that doesn't orders. Were given quietly, but with precision. No public announcement, no speeches. The enemy thought they had time before humans reacted. They didn't know the fleets were already waiting, hidden in the shadows of space, in the asteroid belt near Jupiter, enormous hangar doors began to open. Inside were ships the galaxy had never seen sleek. Black and bristling with weaponry, their engines glowed with a blue fire that seemed alive. Every hull bore the same words in bold letters: Solar Command, on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Shipyards hummed with activity, crews in exosuits loaded. Weapons the size of buildings, drones swarmed over the ships like ants, attaching armor plates that could survive direct starfire. The galaxy had thought human fleets were small and outdated. They were wrong, very wrong. While the Kothri Empire celebrated their victory over a defenseless colony, human fleets slipped quietly from their hidden bases. They didn't take the usual trade lanes or warp gates. Instead, they used jump corridors only human navigators. New routes that could bring them right into enemy space without warning. In his flagship's command chair, Ryan Hale watched the stars slide past the viewports. His crew worked in silence, their faces lit by the glow of the controls. They all knew what was about to happen. No one was smiling. This was not about glory. This was about justice. Far away, Admiral Vorik of the Kothri laughed in his war room. His advisors assured him that humans would take months to respond. He poured himself a glass of glowing green liquor and raised it in mock salute to the weak ones. He said, but outside his borders, in the silent dark, something was already coming for him, something fast, something angry, something human. And this time, Earth wasn't going to be nice. The Kothri Empire thought they had time. They believed humans were still scrambling, still debating, still asking the Galactic Council for help. They didn't know that Earth's answer was already on its way, in the deep shadow of the moons. Far side, something enormous began to move. For decades, alien observers had watched Earth's shipyards and seen nothing but small, outdated warships. They thought this meant humans had reached their limit. But the real shipyards were never. On Earth's surface, they were buried under lunar rock, hidden inside hollowed asteroids, and sunk deep into the seas of Europa, one by one. The doors of these hidden fortresses opened. Out came the Aegis-class dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city. Their black hulls seemed to swallow light along their sides, deep blue lines, pulsed like the veins of some living giant. Every pulse was a heartbeat power flowing through weapons the galaxy didn't even have names for yet. In the command center of the lead ship, HMS Valiant, Captain Ryan Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His crew worked quietly, their movements sharp and precise. The air hummed with the deep vibration of engines warming up. It wasn't just sound, it was a feeling in the bones, a pressure in the chest. "Status," Ryan said, his voice calm. "All ships in formation." "Captain," replied Commander Ellis, his second-in-command, "stealth fields engaged. The enemy has no idea we're coming." The fleet didn't travel through the known warp gates. They used slipstream corridors, secret paths between stars discovered by human scientists decades ago. No alien had ever been allowed to map them. In these corridors, the Valiant and her sister ships could cross light years in hours. It was like moving through the hidden veins of the galaxy, unseen and unstoppable, while the human fleet advanced. The Kothri Empire's 7th Fleet lounged in their home system. Their warships floated above their capital world, banners of victory waving on their holoscreens. Admiral Vorik sat in his massive, throne-like chair. He was still celebrating the destruction of Eden Reach. He had no idea the same ships that had slaughtered civilians were about to face something built for one purpose, sending them. The first sign came as a ripple in the system's outer sensor nets. Kothri technicians frowned, adjusting controls. "There's something big coming through," one of them said. "How big?" The commander on duty asked. The technician's eyes widened. "Bigger than anything we've ever recorded." And then the Valiant emerged. No grand announcement, no bright flare, just a shadow sliding into real space. Behind it, dozens of dreadnoughts followed, each one a silent predator in the dark. They moved in perfect formation. Every alien on the Kothri capital watched the live feed in stunned silence. Admiral Vorek leaned forward. "What in the void are those?" he growled before anyone could answer. A deep, resonating pulse came from the Valiant's forward cannons. Blue light built along its edges, brighter and brighter. And then, without warning, it fired. The beam was not like any weapon the Kothri knew. It didn't explode, it raced. A single shot cut through 5 Kothri warships as if they were made of paper. There was no debridged molten fragments drifting away into the void. Panic hit the enemy fleet instantly. Kothri ships scattered, trying to form defensive lines. But the human fleet moved too fast. Their engines allowed impossible turns. Sliding between enemy formations like wolves through a herd, the Aegis-class dreadnoughts unleashed their second wave mass drivers that hurled slugs the size of small houses at near-light speed. Every impact broke shields like glass. Tearing through hulls and leaving fire trails that burned in the vacuum, Kothri pilots screamed over open comms. "This isn't possible. They shouldn't have this tech." In the Valiant's command center, Ryan didn't shout. Every order came in a steady, controlled tone. Target their command ships. Disable comm relays. Leave nothing for reinforcements to coordinate with. One by one, the enemy's chain of command dissolved. Ships began fleeing, but the slipstream gates out of the system suddenly collapsed. The humans had seeded the area with gravlock mines, devices that could crush spacetime around a gate, making escape impossible on the Kothri capital world. The sky turned red with streaks of burning wreckage. Civilians who had been cheering their fleet's victory over Eden, Reach now stared in horror. The humans were not just stronger, they were faster, smarter, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Within an hour, the 7th Fleet was gone. Not broken, not retreating, gone. Ryan's voice came over the open channels, his image appearing on every Kothri screen. "This is what holding back looks like," he said coldly. "Next time, remember that we warned you." The transmission ended. The Valiant turned, engines burning blue. The human fleet left the system as silently as they had arrived. In their wake, they left only debris, silence, and a fear that would spread across the galaxy faster than light, somewhere deep in the Kothri capital's council hall. One trembling officer whispered to his superior. They weren't bluffing. They were waiting, and now the galaxy would have to live with the truth. The Kothri Empire's 7th Fleet was gone, not defeated, in battle erased across the galaxy. The footage spread like wildfire. It played on alien news networks, in crowded bars, in military briefings. Everyone saw the same thing: a human fleet appearing from nowhere, cutting through warships like paper, then vanishing without a trace. Some called it impossible, others called it a lie. But in the heart of Kothri space, there was no debate. Their people had watched their proudest fleet burn in the sky above their own capital. And yet, the humans weren't finished destroying. One fleet wasn't enough. Ryan Hale knew the Kothari still had dozens of fleets, hundreds of worlds, and a military machine that had terrorized weaker races for centuries. If Earth wanted to end the threat, they couldn't just defend their borders, they had to take the fight into the enemy's heart. On the HNS Valiant, the bridge was quiet. A three-dimensional map of Kothari space floated in the air. Glowing with red and blue points, Ryan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes scanning the display. "Our next target is here," he said, tapping a system marked in red. The name flickered on the Holodraco's forge. Commander Ellis frowned. "That's one of their biggest shipyards. It's where they build their dreadnoughts," he said. Ryan nodded. "Exactly. If we take Draco's forge, we don't just cripple their fleet, we humiliate them." The plan was not to arrive with overwhelming force and slowly grind the defenses down. Humans had a better way. They would arrive like a knife in the dark, strike with precision, and be gone before the enemy even knew what hit them. In the dark between stars, the Valiant's fleet slipped into a slipstream corridor. The corridor shimmered like liquid light, the stars stretching into endless streaks. Inside, the crew moved with calm focus. They had trained for years in secret for missions like this. Every person on board knew exactly what their role would be when the moment came. At Draco's Forge, life was normal. Massive factory platforms orbited a gas giant, hundreds of Kothri. Workers in exosuits welded armor plates onto half-finished ships. Freight haulers moved between stations, carrying weapons, engines, and power cores. The system's defense fleet, nearly 40 warships, drifted lazily nearby. Confident they were untouchable, that confidence lasted until the first human stealth mine detonated. A blinding blue-white shockwave ripped through the lead defense cruiser, snapping it in half before the crew even knew they were under attack. In the same instant, 3 more mines went off, turning the Kothri formation into chaos before the alarms could finish sounding. The HN's Valiant and her sister dreadnoughts dropped out of slipstream. The humans didn't appear at the edge of the system like most fleets would. They appeared right in the middle of the shipyard's orbital ring. One moment, space was empty. The next, it was filled with black and blue human warships, their weapons already primed. Ryan's voice was calm. All batteries fire. The sky lit up with streaks of blue energy and kinetic slugs traveling at near light speed. Kothri warships exploded one after another before they could even turn their guns. Those that tried to fight back found their weapons misfiring. Unknown to them, human cyberwar teams had already infected their targeting systems the moment the fleet arrived. Meanwhile, human boarding teams launched from the dreadnoughts in small, needle-shaped craft. They slammed into the walls of the shipyard's control centers. Cutting through with plasma drills, armored human marines poured inside. Moving fast and silent, Kothri security forces tried to resist, but their shots glanced off the humans' adaptive armor. Every corridor fell in minutes. From the bridge of the Valiant, Ryan watched as Draco's Forge burned. One massive ship under construction, a Kothri dreadnought, twice the size of any human vessel, was targeted by the Valiant's main cannon. The beam struck its unfinished core, and in a flash of white light, the ship split apart, debris scattered like falling meteors into the gas giant below, disappearing into the swirling clouds. Commander Ellis looked at the display. Enemy fleet is down to 8 ships. Captain, Ryan didn't hesitate. Disable them. Let them watch us finish this. The remaining Kothri warships were crippled but not destroyed. Their crews forced to watch as the humans planted demolition charges on every ship in the dock. One by one, explosions blossomed, turning decades of Kothri military investment into drifting wreckage. Then, just as quickly as they had come, the human fleet vanished back into slipstream. By the time Kothri reinforcements arrived, all they found was silence, burning metal, and their own helpless survivors across the galaxy. The message was clear: the humans were no longer just defending themselves. They were hunting, and no one knew where they would strike next. The destruction of Draco's Forge was not just a battle, it was a message. Every major news network across the galaxy carried the story. They replayed the same images again and again: the sudden appearance of black human dreadnoughts, the blinding, blue beams tearing through Kothri ships, and the shipyard's mighty dreadnought collapsing into the gas giant's clouds. On planets light-years apart, people stopped what they were doing to watch. In a crowded bazaar on the desert world of Starship, merchants gathered around a flickering holoscreen. A grainy feed showed the moment the Valiant's main cannon fired. The crowd fell silent. Some wore expressions of awe, others of dread. No one spoke for several long moments in the glass towers of the Union Trade League. Wealthy alien officials, watched the same footage in private rooms. One counselor poured a drink with a trembling hand. "They weren't bluffing," he muttered. Another leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. "No. They were hiding for decades." The galaxy had seen humans as upstarts, resourceful, but primitive. They had been tolerated, sometimes mocked, often underestimated. Now, the very races that had looked down on Earth were whispering a different question: if this was what humans could do when they were angry, what could they do if they were desperate? The Kothri Empire was in shock. 2 devastating losses in less than a week. Entire fleets gone. A critical shipyard reduced to scrap. Their leadership tried to control the news, calling the events isolated incidents, but their own people had seen the burning wreckage in their skies. Fear was already spreading through their worlds like fire in dry grass. Back on Earth, there were no public celebrations, no cheering crowds, no triumphant parades. Inside the Solar Defense Command on Mars, the mood was cold and focused. Ryan Hale stood at the center of a massive holodisplay showing the galaxy. Red zones marked Cathera-controlled space. Blue lines traced the hidden slipstream corridors the human fleet could use. Reports from human intelligence agents were coming in fast. Every major power was now moving ships, reinforcing borders, and running drills. Some claimed it was precaution, but Ryan knew the truth. The galaxy was no longer afraid of the Koskri. They were afraid of us. In a dimly lit bar on a mining station near the galactic core, 2 grizzled freighter captains nursed their drinks. One leaned close to the other, speaking low. "My cousin works maintenance on a Kothri listening post," he said. "They say the humans didn't use warp gates, didn't even show up on sensors until they were right on top of them." The other shook his head. "No one moves like that." No one, but his voice carried the quiet tone of someone who knew it was true. On the outer rim, a small frontier colony debated whether to fly the human flag over their settlement. Not because they were human, they weren't, but because they thought maybe, just maybe, it would make the humans see them as friends when the next war came. Meanwhile, in the shadows of Kothri politics, there was panic. Military commanders whispered in back rooms about strategies that might stop the humans. Some suggested striking Earth directly, others dismissed the idea immediately. "If they can do this to us in our own systems," one general said, "imagine what they could do defending their homeworld." The Galactic Council convened an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of races filled the Great Chamber. Some demanded sanctions against Earth. Others argued for peace talks before the war spread. But no one could agree, because beneath their arguments was a shared, unspoken thought. No one wanted to be the next to face the human fleet. In the middle of all this, the human dreadnoughts didn't stop. The Valiant and her sister ships moved like phantoms. One day, they were seen above a neutral world, delivering medical supplies to a race that had suffered under Kothri raids. The next, they appeared in deep space, blasting apart a Kothri convoy carrying weapons. Every move was calculated, every strike precise, and with each action, the galaxy's image of humans shifted from newcomers to something far more dangerous: the quiet hunters. No one saw coming until it was too late. In the Kothri capital, Admiral Vorak sat in his private war room. The walls around him were covered in tactical maps and casualty reports. His claws tapped against the table as he studied the latest losses. He had underestimated the humans. Worse, he had made them angry. Now, his empire was bleeding in places it had thought unassailable. He looked at his officers. Find their base of operations. Find where these ships are coming from. I don't care what it takes, but deep down, even Vorak knew the humans might not have a single base. They could be anywhere, moving through those invisible slipstream corridors, ghosts in the dark, striking where they pleased. And in the halls of power across the galaxy, leaders began to plan in whispers. Not plans to attack Earth, plans to survive it. The war should have slowed. After 2 devastating blows, the Cathri Empire should have had time to breathe, but humans didn't give them that time, from the moment Draco's forge fell. Ryan Hale's fleet moved without pause. They didn't wait for the Cathri to regroup. They didn't sit on the edges of enemy space. They drove deeper into systems no outsider had ever dared to enter. The strategy was simple in design, but terrifying in execution. They didn't aim for the obvious military targets. Instead, they struck at the arteries of the empire. Fuel refineries, ship component factories, communication hubs. Everywhere the Cathri relied on for power, the humans appeared. And when they left, those places no longer functioned. On the bridge of the HMS Valiant, the air felt heavier than normal, not from fear, but from purpose. The crew knew they weren't just fighting to win a war, they were dismantling an empire, piece by piece. Ryan stood before the massive holographic map. A thin red line traced the fleet's progress through Cathri space. It was not random, it was surgical. Next stop Velkar Prime, Commander Ellis said. Ryan's gaze sharpened. Velkar Prime wasn't a fortress world, it was something more important. It was the industrial heart of the Cathri military, the place where their weapons were built. If Velkar Prime fell, the Empire's ability to wage war would collapse within months. The fleet entered Slipstream at silent battle readiness. In the glowing corridor of folded space, there was no sound, no movement from outside, just the hum of engines and the steady rhythm of trained hands at their stations. Ryan's orders were brief, fast in, fast out. No survivors in the command structure when they emerged. Velkar Prime was exactly as intelligence had described it. The planet's surface was covered in sprawling factories. Great steel spires belched smoke into the thick atmosphere. In orbit, shipyards floated like skeletal giants, each one holding the shell of a half-built warship. Patrolling above them were 3 full Cathri battle groups. It was more ships than the humans had faced in a single engagement so far. But Ryan didn't slow. Stealth fields drop, he ordered. The black dreadnoughts shimmered into full view. The moment the Cathri sensors caught them, alarms screamed across the system. The defenders rushed to form a wall. But human weapons were already firing. The Valiant's main cannon roared first. A beam of searing blue light cut through the lead Cathri cruiser. The blast didn't just destroy the ship, it ripped the command module free and sent it spinning into the void. Behind the Valiant, the rest of the human fleet opened fire in perfect sequence. The first volley tore holes in the wall of ships. The second volley went for the shipyards, one after another. The skeletal structures erupted in massive fireballs. Half-built warships tumbled away into the planet's gravity from Velkar's surface. They fell like burning meteors. Human boarding craft didn't wait for the fighting to end. They darted through the chaos. Locking onto factory control stations, Marines in adaptive armor burst inside, moving like shadows between blasts of gunfire. Within minutes, the factories were in human hands. Control towers were rigged with explosives. Data cores were ripped out and loaded onto dropships. On the planet's surface, Cathri workers stared up at the falling wreckage from orbit. Some cheered quietly. They had lived under the Empire's harsh rule for generations, and they knew, even if they didn't understand, that something powerful had just arrived to change everything. In orbit, the Cathri defenders fought desperately. But their coordination was falling apart. Human cyberwar units flooded their systems. Weapon controls locked up, shields collapsed. Navigation went dead. It was as if their own ships had turned against them. The final blow came when the Valiant fired its magnetic lancer. A weapon so powerful it could bend the magnetic fields of a planet for several seconds. It struck the enemy flagship. The ship's hull twisted under the force, buckling, until it split open. Thousands of tons of metal scattered into the void. By the time the humans were done, Velkar Prime's factories were nothing but smoldering ruins. The battle groups were destroyed, and the Kothari's most important military production world had gone dark. From the moment the fleet had entered the system to the moment they vanished back into slipstream, only 42 minutes had passed on distant worlds. Alien leaders watched the reports come in. Many couldn't believe it. How could a fleet move this fast, strike this hard, and then vanish without leaving a trail? But they all knew one thing: the humans weren't stopping. They weren't satisfied with punishing the Kothari. They were dismantling them, piece by piece, until nothing remained. In the private chambers of the Galactic Council, the tone had changed. No longer were they debating whether humans were dangerous. Now they debated how much time they had before humans turned their eyes to someone else. And in his quarters aboard the Valiant, Ryan Hale stood looking out at the stars. He knew the war wasn't over, but he could feel that the Kothari were starting to break. The march into their worlds had begun, and there was no force in the galaxy strong enough to stop it. The fall of Velkar Prime shattered the Kothari Empire's pride. For centuries, they had been the hunters of the galaxy. Now they were prey across Kothari space. Governors sent frantic messages to the capital. Reports poured in of human fleets appearing in one system after another. Sometimes they destroyed military bases, sometimes they took supply convoys, and sometimes they did nothing but appear, hover in silence, and then vanish. A reminder that they could be anywhere, at any time. The psychological damage was worse than the physical. Whole fleets refused to leave dock. Soldiers deserted before battle. Civilian populations began rioting, demanding their leaders make peace before the humans came for them. In the Kothari capital's war chamber, Admiral Vorek stood over a map. Littered with red marks, every one of them was a loss to the humans. His claws dug into the table's surface as he glared at his advisors. "We have lost control," one admitted, his voice trembling. Another spoke quietly. "It is no longer about winning. It is about surviving." And so, after weeks of silence, the Kothari did what they had sworn they never would. They sent a request to meet. The meeting took place not on Earth, not in the Kothari capital, but in neutral space, a station known as the Pillar of Accord. It was ancient, built before either species had taken to the stars. Its great hall was a ring of glass, giving a full view of the stars. Here, leaders of the two sides sat across from one another. Ryan Hale stood at the head of the human delegation. His black uniform without decoration, Vorek entered, shoulders stiff, his eyes avoiding Ryan's. There was no grand speech, no ceremony. Ryan's words were simple: "The war ends here. On our terms." The terms were not what anyone in the galaxy expected. There was no demand for tribute, no orders to dismantle Kothari fleets entirely. Earth demanded three things: the release of all worlds under Kothari occupation, the dismantling of any military operations beyond Kothari borders, and an official recognition of Earth as a sovereign power equal to any empire in the galaxy. Vorek's advisors whispered furiously in his ear. Some urged him to reject the demands, but the memory of burning shipyards and shattered fleets weighed heavily. At last he gave a slow nod. The Kothari accept. The agreement was signed in silence. And as the Kothari delegation departed, news spread faster than light. The war was over. The humans had won. But it was not the victory alone that shook the galaxy. It was what came next. The new accord was formed, a coalition of worlds. Some old powers, some small colonies, many had lived in fear of the Kothari. Now they rallied to Earth's side, not because Earth forced them, but because Earth had proven something no one else had. They could stand against the galaxy's strongest predator and win. The Valiant returned to Earth orbit in silence. There were no parades. Ryan Hale walked the docks. Speaking quietly with his crew, he knew this was not an ending. It was a beginning in the months that followed. Human influence spread faster than trade routes. Ambassadors negotiated defense treaties. Human ships patrolled corridors they had once been banned from entering, and everywhere they went, the same feeling followed respect, mixed with a quiet, unshakable fear. On a frontier world once ruled by the Kothri, a young alien child pointed at a passing human patrol ship and asked his mother, "Are they the ones who made the sky safe?" She smiled faintly. "Yes, but never forget they can make it dangerous again in the Galactic Council." The tone toward Earth changed forever. When humans spoke, others listened. When humans warned, others took the warning seriously. The quiet race once mocked for their small fleets was now the measure by which military strength was judged. Ryan Hale never claimed the title of conqueror. He never called himself a hero. But those who served under him would remember the calm in his voice, the way he never wasted words, never fired a shot without reason, and the way he had led them into the heart of the most feared empire, walked them back out, undefeated. From that day forward, every star map in the galaxy bore a new label across human space. Not just Earth, but Earth do not provoke. It was not peace built on trust. It was peace built on the memory of what happened when Earth stopped being nice, and somewhere, deep in the command decks of the HNS Valiant, Ryan stood alone, looking at the endless night beyond the glass. He knew there would be other threats, other wars, but now the galaxy understood a truth that could not be unlearned. Humanity had always been dangerous. They had simply been patient, and patience had run out.